How about that? There we go. I had to push the right buttons. All right, so any public comment? Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to move to approval of the minutes from meeting held February 3rd.
Madam Chair, just some information. I just got text from Matt, and he's going to be here in about 10 minutes.
Excellent, thank you.
Did you say he's on his way?
He's on his way. He'll be here in 10 minutes.
Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last meeting?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the minutes from the February 3rd, 2025 meeting of the City Commission.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ben Thielen? Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. We've approved the minutes. All right, and next item is correspondence to the Study Commission update. Nice.
Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay. So we have mail. And we've already run across this issue. Butte Study Commission, thank you for your time and input. I would like to ask if you could please have your board members and clerk to turn on their microphones when they are talking during your meetings. The public at home watching does not hear anything, and if their buttons are not in correct on or off position. Thank you very much, and Godspeed with your task. Not signed. But that means that people are tuning in. That's why I came up here. I'm going to sit down here so I can spread out and see you guys, because it was so hard for me to see you from down there. So this way I can see who's talking without getting a big crick in my neck.
Excellent and good advice as we all are learning and getting our wheels on as we get this rolling. We'll remember which button to push and that the red light indicates it's on. Okay, moving on to unfinished business. Our first item is from Ms. Dolan to introduce wording for a moment of reflection.
Thank you. I did actually print out things at home. Ben, would you mind giving those to the rest of the folks there? And, what? I know, limp around. So what I did was, I actually was mulling this over after our meeting, and this is the pretty much the county commission reflection, and so I didn't really think it needed much tweaking at all, unless you all do. So I thought I'd give that to you, and what do you think? I think it's kind of short, sweet, to the point, but you just let me know.
I would like to remove the reference to Almighty God for the reasons I stated last week.
If we could hold on a second. So we need, I was reviewing how we run our meetings, and so we need a motion and a second, and then there's a discussion.
Oh, and then there's discussion.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and then Ms. Shaw, I'd like to remind you to turn on your microphone. Okay, so for the record, I'll read the reflection that Ms. Dolan has provided for us, and she says that it's the same as the 2025 Butte-Silver County Commission Commissioner's reflection, and it says, Almighty God, we implore you to look upon this night as we make decisions which so greatly affect our BSB community. Direct our thoughts, words, and deeds so that we may please you and best serve our fellow citizens. Amen. So I would entertain that motion and second at this point.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this reflection for the 2025 Study Commission.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion, please.
Now?
Yes.
As we discussed last week, this is definitely a prayer, and I would just like to make note that I object to starting public meetings with prayers to any god.
Thank you, Ms. Khan. Any other discussion? I would add in here that one of the things the commission has discussed is that we want to be welcoming and open to all of our citizens. And so all of our citizens may not be practitioners. And so as we think about this prayer that we add, I would ask you to think and consider what is being open and welcoming to all people of our county.
Madam Chair, my thought on it is, either way, you're going to make somebody mad. Either you're going to piss them off for saying Almighty God or not. So I would suggest that it stands as it is.
Ms. Shaw.
We just did the Pledge of Allegiance. It says under God. I'm just saying, I agree totally with Mr. Thielen, that you're going to irritate somebody, and to take that out, then how do you even start this? So that would be my thinking, and council did it for 18 years. I was on council, and nobody was objected, except for maybe one person. But anyway, that would just be my thought. And you're opening a can of worms, no matter what you go on it. Thank you. Maybe you can plan on it.
Don't forget the microphone. Was it on? I didn't hear it come through.
You didn't.
No, my light was on.
It wasn't on the microphone.
That's one. It's always been, okay. It's been so long. Did everybody hear me?
No, I didn't hear any of it.
Okay.
If you want that.
I agree with Mr. Thielen that no matter what, you're going to maybe annoy somebody, but we just did the Pledge of Allegiance. We said under God. I mean, if we start, making that a priority, I think we're going to cause some problems. And for council, I was on council for all those years, and we always read this very same prayer, and I don't think anybody objected. That was just my opinion.
Thank you. Ms. McCormick.
I think it's a difficult situation, but I don't see why we have to do either one. It's not being disrespectful to the Pledge of Allegiance or to God, but I think of all the city, county boards and organizations that don't have prayers at the beginning of them. It seems like it's only council. I mean, it's not like we're going astray from some standard procedure. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so I'll call for the question. In order to add this to our agenda, you would be voting to add the reflection as written to the agenda. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you all for taking the time to consider that. Our second is our discussion of the draft bylaws, and we do have Mr. Enruth here who can help us answer any questions that we have with the bylaws. Mr. Enruth, last meeting we ran through and basically accepted the boilerplate with the exception of changing the words in there for Butte-Silver Study Commission. There were a couple of questions that were lingering, one of them being about proxy voting, and there is a provision in here that says that a study commission member who is not present at the meeting at the time a motion is put forward to a vote cannot vote. Study commission members shall not be permitted to vote by proxy vote or by written vote. There was a question regarding if we needed to move to meetings where perhaps folks would be on Zoom or on a conference call, if that section 4.06 proxy voting would preclude the ability to have that done via the electronic means.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Deputy County Attorney Sean Peters and I are working on the proxy vote question. As of right now, it does not look like you are able to vote by proxy, but because this is, a sub-commission of, the bigger Council of Commissioners, we want to make sure that that's true. And if you guys can vote by proxy, if you're not here, we want to allow you to do that. So him and I will have an answer for you on that by the end of next week. With regards to, not end of next week, by the beginning of next week, by Monday, by your next meeting. With regards to Zoom or a conference call, and does the proxy vote prevent that? I do not think it does. I think based on the rules that you have set forth in front of you, that being able to Zoom in or conference in is available, but I will find you a definitive answer on that as well. But as of for now, I do think that is appropriate. I don't think that no proxy voting would prevent that.
Thank you, Mr. Enruth. Yes, Mr. Dennehy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Matt, thank you very much for that, that edification on the process. I think the question was, the proxy vote, and you're looking into that, is not something that state law does, but for a Zoom meeting where the commissioners might be out of town or might be off the council commissioner or a courthouse, but they can Zoom in. And if we do have a significant vote to take, that vote would be appropriate using Zoom or electronic means. And then versus a proxy vote, which is, hey, I'm not going to be here. Could you just bring my vote to the commission and vote that way? So that's kind of where we have kind of had the discussion and have you look for us on that sort of question for us, legal question.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dennehy, yes. So I do not believe if proxy voting is determined to not be available, period, I do not believe that would prevent someone from appearing via Zoom to attend a meeting. Now, with that being said, I want to absolutely double check on that, because when we first had COVID hit, the Montana State Legislature allowed for individuals to appear via Zoom. Since then, they've had a real issue with it, and I do not know if they put any legislative rules in effect that would prohibit it, which may necessarily reflect what this council can do, or if that's just only what they are doing, which is why I want to be able to give you a definitive answer on that. I think that it would still be appropriate to allow all of the commissioners to appear, even if someone is appearing via Zoom from their home because of illness, quarantining, or being out of town. So I do not think that proxy voting one way or another will have an effect on that. I just want to get a definitive answer on it based off of my knowledge of what the current Montana State Legislature has done previously.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
Other questions for Mr. Enruth regarding the bylaws? Matt, I think the only other change was in the last section under Part 7. We did strike a sentence in item number 3 saying that prepared statements that are also read, however, shall be deemed unduly repetitious. We struck that. We thought that it was okay if our public wanted to read their statement instead of just providing that. So we would take any recommendations you might have of that strike.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, no, I fully agree that striking that is appropriate. It is this body's responsibility, I believe, particularly with what you are all doing to allow the public to not only write their statements to give to everybody, but to also be able to be heard and to to stand up and speak. Because sometimes, statements can be significantly longer if they're written, but individuals can get up and give you their 3 minutes or 5 minutes or what everybody deems appropriate here. Their 2 cents on the opinion or on whatever they're talking about. And we can look at last week's commission meeting, in particular with regards to the EPA comments that are being submitted by the Council of Commissioners. Everybody had the opportunity to write a statement, send that into the EPA. Those statements were also given to commissioners, but they also had the availability of standing up and expressing how they feel about a certain topic. And I think that's very important for this particular body to have available to the public based off of what you're doing.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Enruth? Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt, I'm curious, we were talking about another item on the agenda for tonight a little bit earlier today, and one of the things I wanted to ask you is, because there's kind of two buckets, one that this commission will be dealing with. One bucket is the items that the voters can vote on come November of '26. But there's another bucket of recommendations for the county attorney to look at to tweak some things. Are you, at this point, of course you can't look in a crystal ball, but open to those suggestions, and are you going to be willing to put those suggestions forward? Because I know in past study commissions, recommendations were given to the county attorney, but then they were not followed through on or just not dealt with. So I'm hoping that you'll be wanting to be proactive in that regard. Does that make sense, Matt?
I was going to say, Commissioner Rowland, can you clarify the question? My understanding is you guys have two buckets. There's issues that voters can vote on, and then there's another one that you guys will be working on in which you'll be presenting questions to my office for recommendations?
So I'm going to ask Ms. Shaw to clarify what I was talking about. She might be able to.
That's okay.
Thanks,
Hey,
Cindy.
Matt. Thank you, Commissioner Dolan. So, Matt, what we were doing is I was in the one 20 years ago, 2004-6, and so we ended up with 5 ballot issues that actually went on the ballot for the electorate to vote on. But we, as a commission, over the year and a half or whatever it was that we deliberated over what we wanted to do, there were some things that came up that were just simply recommendations. They didn't get voted on. They were just, we put them out there mainly in advertising as an addendum to the actual ballot issues. And we just wanted the community to know that these seemed to be pretty high on the list, that people wanted to see us do. And one, I forget exactly what they were, but there were things that we wanted to maybe consider, central purchasing, or just to kind of put some kind of bug in people's ear to let them know that we did hear what they had to say, but they weren't actually ballot issues that we could even do anything about in this particular setting of the study commission, the review that we did of the government. So that's I think that's what Cindy was talking about.
Yes, my office was going to be more than willing to provide comment on them, with regards to the legality, how they would affect any current ordinances or anything that's in place in this county, or how, if those are implemented through another process, not perhaps this one where, where they're on the ballot and the citizens are voting on them, but if this is something we're looking at changes, this is the correct process to that. Absolutely, my office will 100% be on board with helping facilitate that connection between this study commission and the citizens of Butte-Silver Bow.
Thank you, Matt. I just wanted to follow up and say, because I think in past study commissions, when good ideas were presented, they just kind of went into a black hole, and folks were like, well, whatever happened? I thought you guys wanted to do X, Y, and Z, and X, Y, and Z kind of just went into oblivion somewhere. And it would be nice to kind of, fulfill that circle and say, okay, these are the recommendations, and then this is the advice we had gotten from the county attorney with regard to A, B, and C, or whatever it is. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. My office will 100% be on board with providing this council any legal recommendations, and any legal advice it requires. So if there are things that are not going to go on, the ballot for the voters to vote on, but there are other ways that they can be addressed within this community or through other councils or other bodies that are part of this government, we will make sure that we, draft memorandums that are on those points that are then provided to the study commission that then can be used to disseminate to the public to say, hey, these concerns were addressed. but it's not something that this study commission could do. This is how we're possibly going to look at it in the future, and we're giving this to X person or committee to look at.
Excellent, thank you. Other questions?
Madam Chair, just for a point of reference and maybe a suggestion, Kim gave us the charters from 1976 when the consolidation of city and county governments took place. And then there's the 1989 Study Commission, the 1996 Study Commission, 2006 Study Commission, and 2016, there wasn't a study commission. The voters decided that we didn't need to look at those. But each one of those agendas, or each one of those charters, except for the 1976 ones, which was a major one, consolidating city and county government, have recommendations that were voted on. So there is a ballot that has the language there, for example, for partisan elections or for continuing nonpartisan elections. So there's the ballot is started with 4, and that's what the people in Butte voted for. But there are also some recommendations there, as you talked about, Cindy, and they were pretty interesting too. So if you do have time and have some free time to study those, it was very helpful for that. So thank you.
Ms. Khan?
I would just like to add to what Dan said. I believe it was the last one from 2006. If you look at the very end, it looks like there was some controversy over an issue, and I think there were like 4 commission members who actually wrote out their opposition to something. It's just, I found it really interesting and thought, well, I'm going to put this in there as well to show that in the future, that if there is some controversy between some members in the conversation and some in the other, that it is noted in there. There is that precedent that it's been noted. And also in your blue packets, I think I put them all together today. I think I put the current charter, which is also in the package you got last time as a 2006 charter. But you've got the charter that we can scribble on and make notes on too.
Any other discussion for the draft of bylaws? Okay. Thank you, County Attorney and Ruth. We appreciate your time, and we'll look forward to seeing you not next week because we have a federal holiday next week, but the week after.
Briefly before I go, is it the commission's intent to enact these bylaws tonight and everything of that? Yes?
I don't think we can enact the bylaws without your opinion on the proxy vote.
That's true, and I was also going to say this requires public participation, and this meeting was not on the list of all the other public meetings, SARTA board meeting and all of that. So we need to make sure that we get published on that. We can work with IT. I have been in IT jail before, so I know the struggle. Yeah, I just wanted the commission to be aware that basically anything that this body does that is, requires a public hearing by law, like you've got here in your bylaws, any discussions, decisions, or anything that's going to be with regards to this charter, changing the charter, requires public participation. And my legal opinion right now would be that the public does not even know that you guys are here because it was not published.
To clarify?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the charter or our bylaws?
I'm talking about your overall goal is looking at the charter.
Right.
But the bylaws are a significant part of this process.
Right, okay.
Which I do believe
I
the
just
public
wanted to
could
make
put
sure.
some input on if they wanted to.
Oh, okay, so we need to have a public comment period or public hearing?
No. They just need to know
Oh.
that they can come in.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Ms. Khan, I know you were having difficulty getting things published, and we talked about this last meeting about the 48-hour timeline, et cetera. Did you get that resolved, or where is that standing?
Yes, we're all resolved. I spent quite a long time with IT on Friday, with getting lots of permissions to do things. So I can hop on. I got the minutes and the agenda are put on there. The agenda is published 48 hours prior to the meeting, so that would be Friday night, I think. And I got it just in the nick of time this Friday. Hopefully I can get them done earlier. Minutes were really, really long for last week. And then the agenda, well, the agenda can go on, I guess, at any time. Well, agenda goes on Friday because we have until noon for you guys to add things to the agenda. And then I can just slip that right on there. We have a page now on the website that I will work on updating. So go to the county website and find our page. And if there's anything that you would like, that you think we should have, please let me know. And I'll put that on there. I thought it would be a good idea to have your county emails on there. Not going to put your cell phone numbers, but I'll put your county emails on there. And we do have a mailbox now, so people can write to us at the county address at 155 West Granite Street. But yeah, I'm all cleared. I can put minutes and agendas. They'll be on the page. They'll also be on the agenda page, and I can update the calendar. So we're good to go.
Excellent, thank you.
So that just for my own clarification, an agenda was published and the meeting date was published on the webpage?
On what?
On the webpage?
Yes.
Okay, never mind, I
Yes.
retract my previous statement. Y'all do whatever you have on your agenda.
Thank you. Any other discussion on bylaws? Yes.
Madam Chair, Kim said that the minutes for last week were quite long and to post them. As a point of clarification, and County Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but the minutes from last week should not be posted till we approve them. Isn't that correct? That they should be approved first?
It was from 2 weeks. It was the approved minutes that were posted on there.
Okay.
Sorry.
So Ms. Conant had noted that it was the approved minutes
Okay,
that she had
thank you.
posted.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I posted the approved minutes, but to do the agenda, I was going through last week's meeting minutes, so the agenda got in at 4:57 p.m. Hopefully I can get it in by like 2, so, in the future. But, yeah, just because still dealing with technical issues and using a laptop instead of a PC. I think that's it, though.
Okay, and yes, Ms.
Madam Chair, the timetable committee met earlier today, and in that discussion, we were wondering if it would be easier for everyone involved if our agenda items would need to be in by Wednesday instead of Friday for all involved, including the public, so that as we get rolling and are interviewing elected officials or having elected officials come, the public would also have more notice. Perhaps moving that date from Friday to Wednesday might help everybody involved.
Sounds like that's a fairly good idea. I'm seeing consensus. Probably we need to amend then in the bylaws that we're proposing that it would be due Wednesday. Would we say Wednesday by 5, giving Kim a little more time, or?
So the whole agenda or just the timetable agenda?
No, for the whole agenda, as we go through, instead of having a Friday deadline, to have a Wednesday deadline to add items to the agenda. And I think we could just update the bylaws since we haven't adopted them, and then when we formally adopt.
Perfect. Discussion, yes, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Raylan. Kim, is that going to work okay in your schedule? I mean, on Wednesday, I can't remember what your timing, I know you have Friday, pretty much all study commission. How would that affect you?
Yeah, I work Wednesday. I work all 3 jobs, so I do study commission from 1 to 5 on Wednesdays.
Okay.
and then Thursday mornings. So I could probably publish it like on Thursday morning, get it all written up on Wednesday, and publish the agenda on Thursday,
Okay.
which gives us 3 days, which I would prefer the earlier the better.
Okay. And that would be okay with the minutes as well, for a draft? For the
Yeah,
minutes?
yeah, as long as
Okay.
you all get me, if you want to add anything to the agenda, send it in to me by noon on Wednesday so I can get it written up and published.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, happy to do that.
Great. Any other suggestions for our, yes?
This is just a little thing that I noted last time that I do think we should change, and that's the headings for section 3. It has, the heading says Part 2 procedures. It needs to be Part 3.
I gave my copy to, I changed it on.
No, and then on the last one too, and I know this, but it's 8. The last one should be Part 8, not Part 7.
Yeah, I thought I changed it.
No.
Not on the copy I got, but they'll just,
Thank you, Ms. McCormick. Backing up, since we're still drafting, last meeting, we had quite a long discussion about public comment. And we said, let's keep it at 3 minutes, but do we want to extend it to 5? Or do we want to keep it at 3? That was discussion that we had last week, and we kind of went around about letting it just be open, but we needed it to be measured. So I would just reopen that conversation. If there's no will to reopen it, we'll keep it closed. Okay, very good. All right. Anything else with the bylaws for Mr. Enruth while we have him? Ms. Dolan?
Lori and I, excuse me, Madam Chair, Lori and I were just talking, just the bottom of all the paper, and it says prepared by the MSU law, we can take those out, just so, okay, just clean that up. Thank you.
All right, excellent discussion. Thank you all. Mr. Enruth, thank you for your time, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Madam Chair. If anybody has questions, email me. If I don't respond, email me again until I respond. I got about 100 of them today alone. So sometimes it takes a couple to get through to me, but I will see it and I'll catch it and I will get back to you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Matt, for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, discussion of timeline.
Madam Chair, the Timeline Committee did meet, and we have developed a draft for everyone. I don't know if you want to discuss it tonight, or just everyone take a look at it, and we discuss it on next week, but we do have a copy.
I'm just listening.
And this brings up a good question of where we're going to store the electronic, like are we going to have one share drive that everybody could get, but we do have copies for it tonight. So I'll give Kim one.
Excellent, thank you.
Madam Chair, we kind of left our dates open. That was kind of done intentionally. We didn't put specific dates in a lot of the items, but also if you think that we need to extend that, we do have a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but there is time at the end of that timeline that we can extend these deadlines up front. But this was just a starting point for us, and if we've missed any items, let us know too.
Timetable group, did you guys, it looks like you have the public outreach listening sessions. How many, without me reading through the whole thing, how many did you plan for public outreach listening sessions?
Madam Chair, we haven't. We thought that would be open for discussion. We also have in there development of public outreach information, because I think that needs to have a discussion of whether we want to do a survey or if we want to hit different clubs or organizations. So we kind of left that open-ended and just said during the months of May through June that we would conduct those sessions.
Perhaps while we're here, could you kind of walk us through the timeline and just some of the, I guess, the thinking and the logic behind what you have proposed here, and then we can take this from this meeting and review, and then come back next meeting with a decision on adopting. Would that be to the pleasure of everyone? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Casey, if you could.
So, Madam Chair, what we thought within the early March that we would, I think Mr. Dennehy had suggested that we have the MSU staff come in, do some training on what the authority this commission has, what we have the authority to look at for changes, and what, such as ordinances that are outside of our scope, but maybe a recommendation. So that training. Also, reviewing the charter. Kim has given it to us a couple times now, but maybe just taking time on one of the agendas to review it and go through it so everybody's up to date on the charter. And also during that early March is reviewing Butte-Silver Bow's organizational chart, so we're familiar with that. Then we thought through March and April we would be conduct the meetings with elected officials and department personnel. And that might need longer, I don't know, but just as a placeholder. And during that same time frame, maybe we would develop some ideas of what we should do for public outreach. April 7th is a hard deadline that we need to publish our timeline by. That's the 90 days out there. And then May through June, conduct public outreach and listening sessions. So those aren't the public hearings, but getting out and getting what the public want, getting ideas of what the public would like us to look at. And then sometime in that August timeframe would be to have our first formal public hearing. During the November timeframe, and between August and November, start working on the tentative report and adopting that and putting it out and publishing it out there. And then the thought was maybe in January, once you're over the holidays, is have the second public hearing on that report. And then July 7th, I believe, gave us 120 days prior to the general election to adopt the final report, and if there are changes, ballot initiatives, have the county attorney start reviewing it and get that process all done. And during July of 26, doing public education materials. How are we going to get this information out to the public of any proposed changes? In August, approve that education material and then start publishing it. And then November 4th, the general election. If our proposed recommendations are approved and it's changing the former, that we do have the 90 days to stay on and do the transition plan. And so that would be November, December 26th, and then our final, those 90 days would be up on February 2nd of 2027.
Excellent, thank you. I know one of the things that people were interested in hearing from the Law Center about was the forms of government as well, whether we have a commission structure like we currently have, or we have a city manager and a fewer commissioners. Would that be something that you were thinking happening in that training?
Madam Chair, yes. I just kind of made the training just general so that we could, but yes, that was definitely the thought.
And I think with that one too, there's a lot of public interest in that. So it would be to our best interest to get that date established and then well published so that public could be here to listen to the training as well.
I would agree, Madam Chair, and we could probably set that date tonight, or at least set some dates and see when they are available to come.
Yeah, maybe working with availability, reaching out to the law center, see what their availability is, and then look at ours, perhaps. But either way is fine.
Yes, except that we don't meet next week, is that correct? So,
Well,
I guess this board would still have time once we had their schedule.
So with us not meeting next week, I still have 2 hours of work I have to put in because I'm not a 40-hour week person, so I don't get an 8-hour holiday. So I'll still be working 2 hours that day. So is that something, do you want me to reach out to MSU, I assume? So if you guys could let me know, email me preferably, or text me, and let me know exactly what I should put in that email, and I will send it out. And just so that we're on their radar by early March, because, I mean, really, everybody's setting their March calendars now. Like, we're halfway through February already.
I can work with you on
Yeah.
that language.
Okay, yeah, and yeah, I'll be putting time in on Monday anyway, even though it's a holiday.
Mr. Dennehy.
Madam Chair, I think that's a great idea. I think this is flexible enough to add and more information that we need. As you said, Madam Chair, that there's high interest in some of the things we're talking about. So we might want to, have MSU here to discuss that, but also have a discussion later on in the process, so we don't forget what we say or heard. And so we can do that anyway. I remember way back when it was very flexible, and we set up meetings not for on the regular scheduled time as Monday, but we had plenty of time to schedule it, having the public involved and having those public hearings. So I like the way this is set up, very user-friendly, and we can add and subtract as we need necessary. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
With respect to the timeline? March, April 2025, meet with elected officials and department personnel. We discussed potentially including those from other communities that may have different forms of government. Is there flexibility after that, once we get into May, June, August, to still be having those conversations with other departments and communities, or we're not limited to department personnel and elected officials by March, April? Would that be right?
Madam Chair, Matt, absolutely. This is flexible. This is really our first draft at it. Those timetables, it may take longer to get with all of even the Butte-Silver Bow individuals, and we may have to adjust that. But this was kind of our first stab at it, and we certainly, we could add that as a line item to meet with other communities or counties, just so we don't lose sight of it.
Great, and I think it was more on and this is fantastic. This is easy to understand. But I would assume November 2025 adopt a tentative report. If that's the goal, then it's by then we would want to have those discussions complete and have discussions on what we want to include in a recommendation in a report. So that was more my question is, at what point on this timeline do we have to have that information pretty well sewn up? And it looks to me like November 2025 by this. Does that sound right?
Madam Chair, Matt, I think really and truly the only, and Dan or Cindy who have been on this before, but I think and truly the only hard and fast deadline would be that July 7th of 2026, because that would give it the 120 days to put on the ballot. So if we need to adjust the rest, I think that's really about the only hard and fast deadline that we would have.
Madam Chair, I agree. Laura, that's exactly right. So that flexibility is there. Having, interviewing department heads and elected officials, that takes some time. So we're going to have some schedules that are going to be pretty tight in terms of that. I think Matt's also right that the more important thing is to listen to other communities around us and their experience, so that's part of this too. So I think drop dead deadline is July 7th, but between July 7th of 2026, by the way, is flexible enough to include whatever the commission wants to hear about or hear from, and I think this does that.
It seems too that with that first public hearing, that likely will queue up some needs, you know, things that we need to listen to and, you know, interview other communities or, you know, go back to the law center. So I think the timeline being flexible here is good for us to be responsive. I think in looking at again, it's February 10th, or is that right? Is it the 11th? This is the 10th. So February 10th, and looking at that, can we empower Ms. Khan to start reaching out to our department heads now to start that scheduling? Is that reasonable? Okay, so maybe next week with your 2 hours, if you could just start reaching out and seeing what availability folks have in that March to April timeframe to come meet with us, as well as reaching out to the law center to see if they can come and do the presentation.
Do you want me to just randomly pick some, or do you want me to just go in order?
Madam Chair, Kim, I would think, we were talking about this a little earlier, that getting that flow chart is a good idea, and then the department heads, but then there's some departments that may have like sub people, and that I think it might be good in your outreach to ask the department head, hey, you know, a good example is Public Works, and they have roads and water
Roads
and
and
this and that.
everybody.
And then if we need to get that specificity, they could come as well, but maybe just to say, throw that information out there,
Okay.
that might be helpful.
And do you want them to do a presentation or as a more of a question and answer session?
Let's hold that question. Ms. Shaw had a suggestion.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim, also for the list that you gave us of department heads. That was very helpful. We appreciate that. It was in our little folder here. Going back to what Dan said, I agree that this is, well, I'm part of the group that did this, but Lori did the lion's share of the work. One thing that we decided to do was definitely do a general election. Now, I know some other communities have pushed toward the primary, but this is the midterm election. That on top of the fact that most people don't vote as much in the primary as the general. We want to get the most mass of electorate that we can get to vote. And as far as the department heads, I remember 20 years ago we started with the chief. The chief was first. We'll let chief executive speak first, and the organizational chart will really be helpful to have in advance of that. And sometimes we had to have a noon meeting instead of a 5 o'clock because some people could not make a 5 o'clock meeting and they could just do it on their lunch hour. There's quite a few department heads, but we would do 2 or 3 in one meeting sometimes. Yeah. It's kind of important that we do that, and I also stress that it's not an opportunity for a wish list or, you know, for people to vent on their problems, but we do, I think a Q&A is a good point, and Lori and Cindy and I at our meeting today, we decided that there are some questions and answers that are put out there by MSU that seem they're non-invasive, they're not confrontational, they don't cause defensive, you know, feelings from people, because I think 20 years ago, we had some department heads that had no idea what we were going to be doing, and they're like coming in like, you know, what can I say? I'm not going to say the wrong thing. And we need to make sure it's very user-friendly and it is a positive, like Cindy Dolan said earlier, it's a positive thing. Think about this as a positive opportunity to toot your horn and tell us what your department does and how great it is, you know. And that gives all of us, a lot of us weren't in county government like myself and don't even know some of these folks. So that was just mainly a kind of an FYI. So that was just my comments. Thanks.
I think you'll have quite a bit of logistical juggling to do. Hence, the recommendation that you start to reach out, and then we can come forward with the guidelines of what we're hoping for, because they'll ask you, what do you want me to do at this meeting, and what is the purpose? But we can come forward with that logistic, or that those guidelines for the meeting once we have the lay of the land, if you will, of what their availability is, and if we need to make adjustments with our schedule as well. So if we can start that work, I think that's a good step in the right direction. Any other discussion on the timeline? Good work, ladies. Thank you very much for bringing that to us.
Madam Chair, is it the intention that we send any recommendations to that committee prior to adopting in probably 2 weeks?
I think so. Do we want time to review? I don't know that we know all the details yet to say we're ready to adopt this timeline. So if we have recommendations, I think it's reasonable.
Madam Chair, we do have till April 7th to publish, so I think him getting a lay of the land and everybody having time to review is good, because we may be adjusting, we may be March through June or something for departments and elected officials. We might, since we have till April 7th, we might can adjust and only have to publish once versus publishing again right after, because we've had to make adjustments. So that would be my recommendation, is that everybody look at it and we kind of hold till closer to the April 7th deadline.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Cohen.
I just want to say I made a little draft thing and put in your packet, so pull that out, throw it away, and replace it with the one that the Timeline Committee did. And also by my count, I think April 20th was the 90 days, so I didn't know if you were counting from the first of the year or from our first meeting.
I thought I counted, Madam Chair, I thought I counted from our first meeting, but if I erred in my
Okay.
counting, we'll adjust that also.
It gives us 2 more weeks.
Okay, moving on to new business. We have Ms. Hasler available to discuss our budget. The Budget Committee we met electronically with getting some draft from Matt. He brought us some draft, and I sent that to you, Karen, to review if you had an opportunity to. And then we had some questions regarding, just how we do business. And so Ms. Hasler is here to answer those questions for us tonight and give us some recommendations overall. So I'll give the floor to you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I have to apologize. Last week, I completely forgot that I was supposed to be here, so I'm sorry if I caused any confusion. That is completely my fault. I don't know where you would like to start first. We can start with the email questions. There were several. I think there was maybe 5 questions regarding the budget and how it was appropriated, how much was appropriated, what the use is of those funds. There were some questions on the rate of compensation for the ex officio member of the group, and maybe how to broadcast or televise or make your meetings available publicly, and also meeting outside of this courtroom, and how that could, or this chambers, and how that could happen. I'll start with some of the first questions. Last year in the budget, there was $140,000 appropriated. It's in Fund 2350. I think it is on. Is it on? Okay, yes. So That's okay. So it was appropriated in Fund 2350, which is the study commission fund that was used 20 years ago. This $140,000 was an estimate, and it's an estimate for the 2-year period. So generally, our budgets lapse at June 30th, and any unspent funds do not carry over. Yours is a special fund, so any funds that are not spent will carry over into the next fiscal year. If I believe that through the budget process, if you get to a place where you say this isn't enough money for us to carry out our responsibilities as being part of this commission, that is something that would be taken to the chief executive to request additional funding to be appropriated for the next fiscal year. So this $140,000, without having any idea what you would choose to spend it on, was placed in one single line item called Other Purchase Services. So when we appropriate funds to a specific budget, we have the ability to move the funds throughout the different line items, as long as you don't exceed the amount of appropriated dollars in that budget, or you can't move it out either. So whatever is not spent this year can't be moved to another budget. It will just be carried over. Upon the expiration of this commission, any unused funds will then go back to the general fund. So as part of some of the information that I received today from Chairwoman Brandel, there was a budget with line items. And so some of the line items kind of go along with, we have specific lines. We follow the BARS chart of account. It's the budgetary and reporting system for the state of Montana. And so I kind of looked at this description and said, yes, I think it's going to go in this line item. Yes, I think it's going to go in this line item. So I created a budget transfer form for your review. Once you review it, you can change it, accept it. We will have our department move the funds within the lines to where you think that you're going to use them. So there were funds appropriated for salaries and wages and for employer contributions or benefits. For office supplies, for publicity, subscriptions, and dues, for travel and training. There was a lump amount of $9,000. I split it in half, 50-50. At any point, any of these lines, today you might think that you need them in a specific line. In a couple of months, you might determine that you need them somewhere else. This is not a final document. Funds can be moved throughout these lines at any given time during the year, as long as you just don't exceed your appropriation for the year. Other purchase services, this is where we originally budgeted the funds. In the budget, there were 2 lines. One was called legal and compliance, and the other was research and analysis. So we have 2 different types of services. One is called professional services, and that is for legal, accounting, medical, and architecture and landscape, which I don't think we'll be dealing with here. So under your legal and compliance, this is what I put under professional services to cover any legal fees, or any type of, if you reached out to, an attorney to have them review some work or ask for an opinion outside of our county attorney. Under research and analysis, I left this under line item 390. So this is any other fee that you would pay for a service that isn't under medical, accounting, landscaping, architectural, those types of services. So you still do have about $43,000 left in the other purchase services line item. As I mentioned before, I can leave this with Chairwoman Brandel, and you can all look at this and decide that if this is where you would like your lines to be. As soon as it is returned to our office, we can make the changes. As far as purchasing, there were questions about how to purchase things out in the community. There are some local businesses that will take a purchase order. We also have the ability to issue your ex officio member a P card, which is a purchasing card through Butte-Silver Bow. This requires some training and a document that has to be signed understanding the requirements of the P card and the use and restricted use of the P card. That could be helpful for when you're doing public engagement and you needed to purchase different supplies or refreshments, things that, we don't have an account at Safeway that you can go charge, or at Walmart, a P card would be convenient, or a reimbursement form, which sometimes, we don't want to put a hardship on anybody or expect them to use their own funds. So a P card would be helpful for that. If that is an avenue that you would like to go down, just let us know and we can work with the auditor. She issues those P cards and monitors the use of those, as well as our office when those purchases come through, to make sure that they're coded appropriately and that the purchases are appropriate for the department. Another question was about compensation. So as far as the requirements of the position, it was determined that it was very similar to the classification of a clerk's position that Ms. Khan was already being compensated under, so it's a clerk 2. We do have classification of those positions in the HR department, if anybody would like to see those classifications, or I guess look at them to determine if there's something that she's going to be doing outside of the classification. So as of right now, her compensation is classified at a clerk 2. It is under the clerks union, and that is not negotiable, because that is a negotiated union contract. There was discussion about having these meetings broadcast, which I believe IT is already posting them out to YouTube and on our website for review. There's no charge for that. The only charge there would be is to have IT come up and actually set that up. They would charge their time, or they would do an intergovernmental billing to charge, and it would be at an overtime rate because they are after hours meetings. So if they came and set up the equipment and turned on the meeting, it would just be their charge. There is no additional charge for that. Am I missing any other questions? There were, I think, several in the list.
I think you got most of them. Matt, you had some other questions. Was there anything else that you remember?
Madam Chair, I think the question with regards to the form of purchase was answered. Thank you for that.
Welcome.
I think the only other question that I had asked was if this body had any, are we to review Ms. Cohn's time, or, just from a process perspective, review and approval of time worked, those kind of things. Is that an expectation of this group?
Yes, I think it would be. I think that it could be Chairwoman Brandel's responsibility to just review her time card and sign off. All of our timesheets we don't have electronic timekeeping, so all timesheets need to be reviewed and approved by a supervisor, and so I do think it would be appropriate for Ms. Brandel to be reviewing and signing off on those timesheets.
We did that last week, or last time card, without understanding if this was the right process or not, so thank you for affirming that.
I think we're all kind of winging it, for this first bit. It's been, as you mentioned, 20 years since the last commission. And while there are several people in this room that either worked for Butte-Silver or served on the commission that might be more familiar with the process, many of us are not familiar. So I think that it's, kind of a learning curve for everybody.
Yep.
Age before beauty. Wait a minute. I got
Okay,
that in reverse.
Okay, so that's fine.
Go ahead,
Dang
Dan.
it. Thank you. I think we should review Karen's line item from the bar system. Karen has been so helpful to me in the past. I had a relationship with Karen when she was working for Public Works. I didn't have to do any budget because Karen did them. And if there was a problem, Karen would go to prison and not me. So she was very good at that. So there is a typical line item budgets that are done, and I think that'll be great. Again, thank you, Matt, for putting this together. This was wonderful, and just have to change the format, and I think we're good to go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Karen, couple things you didn't touch on, and I'm sure they're somewhere in these line items, but I'm thinking of advertising and promotion and then printing. Because back 20 years ago, we spent quite a bit of money on advertising, promotion, and printing. We even hired a promotion type of advertising person that we hired and spent some money to have them do it. So where would that fall in on your line items?
So advertising or promotion would be under line item 330, which is publicity, subscriptions, and dues.
Oh, it is, okay. Very good.
I do have line item 210 for office supplies, but if there were printing, like printing costs, outside printing costs, that's a service, that's not a supply. So if you sent something to, say, Pitt Printers or one of those different businesses, it would go in line 320, which is not here. It wasn't specifically listed, but we could certainly add it and just move around the funds as you see fit.
All right, thank you. That was it.
Madam Chair, if I may, what I presented was simply for a review on the topics. I have no basis for, and even a starting point on how much to apply to each line item. Is there previous line item budgets that might help us from past commissions that we have access to?
From 20 years ago, yes. We could certainly look and see how they spent their funds. I could pull that up and email it to the group so we could get a better idea. This right now, what this does is it just kind of appropriates the funds where you think you're going to use them so that when expenses do start to roll in, there's budget authority there to cover them. So the last thing that I want to have happen is to have somebody present a purchase order or a receipt, and it can't be processed because there's not enough budget authority because we don't have it in the right lines, because very few people have the ability to override the system to throw it into a negative, like an overspent account. And so I think that, this is a good starting point for certainly, it gives you budget where you think you're going to need it now. This is, it can be changed at any time, given, where you actually are going to spend your funds. Right up until the last minute, we can move it anywhere.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Dolan? Whoever wants to go first.
Karen, I assume that we have to follow the procurement laws. So if we were to say need to hire a consultant for survey analysis or something like that, can you go over, like professional services, at one time wasn't it 20,000 and under you got 3 coats or that? Could you go kind of over those procurement rules?
Sure. So I don't believe you'll probably be purchasing any equipment, so it'll all just be professional services. Professional services under $50,000 do not require procurement. So that's 50. And so I'm pretty sure you're going to be okay, but if you do feel like anybody that you consult with is going to exceed, or they tell you they're going to exceed, then you need to stop before you enter into any sort of agreement. Any sort of agreement requires any sort of agreement has to go through council for approval. So you can, contact somebody and say, hey, we need this from you. And they say, oh, sure, we need a contract for that. Anytime you have a contract, it has to go to council for approval. So that's the first thing. But on professional services, 50,000 is the procurement. So where you have to go out and do an RFP or an RFQ.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Karen, when you were referring to IT and the time for the meetings and paying someone to come start the stream, would it require then the IT person to sit there through the meeting, not just start it so then they can finish if there's anything to turn off, or how does that usually work? Because that's certainly going to be a time issue and a payment issue as far as how much to allocate to IT.
Sure. I know that with the current council secretary, it's part of her duties. They get it started. I don't believe that they're here the whole time if needed, that they can turn it off. But we just need to be I guess, cognizant of our classification, of asking Ms. Khan to do things that are outside of what her union contract allows for her classification. So I don't exactly know how long, like tonight, you know, we're at an hour and 15 minutes. I'm not entirely sure if IT has, if they're still here, if they're going to turn it off, or if they've worked with you. Okay,
Yeah, can I just
absolutely.
go up there? Yeah, and I sent an email out. I don't know if you saw that. One of our discussions on Friday with IT was that they will just come in, they'll turn everything on for us and get us started, and then they're gone. I think he was here for 10 or 15 minutes, and then he's gone. So then he said it's like 3 clicks for me to turn it off. Yeah. So that saves us $100 to $200 per meeting of overtime. And for my time in the evenings, just so you know, I do get differential pay. It's another $1.50 an hour. So I think on my last paycheck, it might have been an extra $10. So it's negligible for them. Thanks.
Ms. Shaw. Jeez.
Jay Shaw, banana, you know, pajamas,
I guess
pajamas.
I'm just
It's okay.
just channeling the Shays.
Thank you, Raylan. Madam Chair, and Karen, well, actually, this is for you, Raylan, and Matt. So at this point, we need to decide if we're not going to go over our allotment for the year, you know, call it half of 140, which is $70,000. Would that be something that we're just going to kind of get a kind of a first blush idea of how much we actually have available to spend once we get some of the salaries down and things like that, advertising? I don't know, we don't want to overshoot the mark, I guess, but that was my question.
So the draft had actually some excellent logic, and so we went through, or I went through the comments and kind of just looked at what it would cost us in salaries. We had a little bit of wiggle in there, about $3,000 of wiggle that we padded. We have $1,000 left that we didn't allocate, and Ms. Hasler allocated that for us. And then we just dropped by kind of looking at, you know, imagining what the cost might be. So we don't know exactly, but it's got good logic in the budget. And then as Ms. Hasler said, we can move those up and down. I would suspect that we're probably going to spend, there's also about $15,000 if we need to print another page of the ballot. Is that correct, Ms. Hasler?
So I was given an estimate based on like what a full special election type would cost, and that's about $60,000. And so we determined, you know, if this is going out with general election, it's already going to include the postage, with the exception of if it includes even 2 to 3 pages doesn't affect the postage. But if you start, you know, having lots of pages, it can make it heavier, which affects the amount that it costs to get it out to the electorate. So I think that there's things that we just don't know right now, but you have to figure like probably a little bit less than $1 a page to print an additional page of, you know, questions for the general election.
So that was listed in contingency funds, and I'm not sure what the line item looks like in your budgeting.
So we don't have a line item for contingency, and so anything that was left after the breakdown that was provided was just left in other purchase services for now.
So like we said, it's a draft. It's just something for the commission to consider. I would suspect that we're going to have maybe more costs on the front. Maybe perhaps Mr. Dennehy, you can speak to that.
Madam Chair, yeah, I think we'll have some cost as we start the project, but remember, at the end of the project is where the expenditures tend to be increased, because we have printing, we'll probably have some professional services to look at, we're probably going to have some marketing that we'll look at. So from my perspective, $140,000, $70,000 per year is quite a good budget, but we might have to take a look at it monthly, maybe have Karen come back and say, okay, here's where we're at to date on the budget. Here's where you should be careful because you're running low, or you have money here to continue on with the process. I would look at what Matt did and now what Karen has put it in the right language that she needs as the county needs, that there will be plenty of time and plenty of leeway, flexibility to change line items and put appropriations from one line item to another. So, yeah, early on, I think we're going to have some expenditures, and later on, probably more.
Ms. Shaw, does that answer your question in terms of planning?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Karen.
And if I may just add on to that, the way this was set up was not as a 2-year, 70,000 a year, but a 2025 budget of 140,000 with the ability to roll into next year. So that will also probably give us an opportunity to make adjustments in year 2 as we see fit.
It's a good idea. Yep.
To the idea of having you back, Karen, you could also give us a balance sheet electronically that could come through our packet. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Excuse me. So kind of having an idea of our budget and looking at where our expenditures are, and if we're on task or getting offline, you could send us a review sheet that has everything ready or there displayed for us.
Sure, we could set up like a specific, if you said the first week of every month or the second week, because then that gives us a little bit of time to get all of the invoices processed. Like the second week of the month, we could send out a breakdown of your budget that says, here's what we've allocated, here's what's been spent, and here's the remaining balance. That wouldn't be an issue to send that to everyone.
And that just can be part of the,
Distribute it
Sure.
as part of the weekly packets.
so you could just include it in that once a month in that packet, and you wouldn't have to come to the meeting is what I'm getting at. That might save you some time as well.
Sure. Okay. I'm happy to come, though, whenever,
Whenever we have questions or needs.
Yeah, you just have to remind me.
we just send a smoke signal, come back.
Yes.
Would that be amenable to everyone that she publishes that budget review for us once a month, and then we can look at it at our meeting? Okay. I think that can be our practice, and then as needed, we'll call you to come.
Sounds good.
I guess, except for like maybe you can set up your time to come meet with us officially from your role in the department. Any other questions from the commission for Ms. Hausler? Thank you again for your time. We appreciate you very much, and we'll take those copies to look at.
Can I give these to you? That's a transfer.
All right, so it looks like we are to other scheduled matters. I don't know of any other scheduled matters we have. How about public comment on anything not on the agenda?
Thanks, Karen.
Okay. All right, very good. And so announcements, we are having our meeting every Monday at 5 p.m. except for on the federal holidays. So next Monday, no meeting. So don't come, Ben. Take a week off. And then the other holidays that interfere with the schedule is St. Patrick's Day, not a federal holiday, but a Butte holiday, and then Memorial Day. And so as we get our wheels on and we get established, I think we had to discuss that we'd be going to an every other week schedule if we can make that happen. So, Mr. Thielen.
Madam Chair, I thought I had to make up a week. I missed one. So.
You can come if you'd like. All right, any other announcements from the group? All right, I would entertain a meeting to adjourn, or a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Any? Not you, right?
Who gave the second? Cindy. Cindy? While I have you all here, because it doesn't have to go in the meeting minutes, I'm working on getting either, I don't know if it'll be an office or just a desk or something, maybe down in the council office, where I can put things for you guys to pick up and have information there for you to pick up. We have a mailbox in the whichever office the copier's in. I think that's finance and budget. So we have a mailbox in there, so I'll be checking that. And I assume those do need to be read into, do they have to be read into out loud like I did tonight? Like any letters or anything? Or just attached? I don't know. Anyway, we have that.
That is in our bylaws. I think it's great to read them into the.
Okay, yeah, like I did tonight.
But I don't know, maybe that might be something we need to ask Matt for an opinion on too.
Yeah, because if we get 20 letters, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or could be like the commission when they just do this letter, this letter, this letter attached. I don't know. I'll look at it.